Welcome. It is no accident that you have found your way to the Release the Genie podcast. What would you do with 3 wishes? And what if you discovered that you are in fact that very genie that could grant them? Well, join us now as we discover who our next genie is as we listen in and learn the stories of triumph, inspiration, and passion with some very special guests. And now, without further delay, your host of the Release the Genie podcast, Mr. Paul Rogers.
That's so much better. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. I am your host, Paul Rogers, and welcome to another episode of Release the Genie. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. Oh my God, I've got such a wonderful guest today. We've only recently connected, but he feels like a long lost brother. So let me give you a little bit of rundown who and what he is. He is a master business mindset coach. He has got his own business, which deals entirely with helping entrepreneurs. He's seen the very highs and he's seen the very lows. And he's a kind of a ground floor coach, I think I like to call him. He's a no nonsense, tell you how it is. As well as this, you're going to love this. He is also a certified firewalker. I don't think I've ever met a certified firewalker and board breaker. So this is going to be fun. So let me introduce you to the wonderful Jacob. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me here today, Paul. I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you.
To be honest, it's wonderful for you to be here, and fairly short notice, so that's quite cool as well. We found a spot to wriggle you in, so that was kind of cool. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. I've kind of set the scene.
Yeah, thanks again for having me here. I'm a certified master, and you get this certification of master when you have enough billable hours. So just means you've been at it a while. But I focus on business strategy and business mindset. The easiest analogy is I show the chef how to run the entire restaurant, not just be a good cook. And I focus with coaches who are usually trained well in their techniques, but have very little to no training in their business. And I work with service-based entrepreneurs. They usually have on the surface some success, and some have major success, but a lot of the below the surface things, which take them out of it or get them in a position where they're working too hard, haven't taken any time off. They make 100,000 and they spend 98. So what I do is just help them not just get their mindset together so they become a leader for their business, but teach them really simple strategies and processes so that they systemize their business and can then choose to either scale it up or scale it to delegate and find that time freedom we all desire.
And just picking up something you said, the chef is one of the sort of the most difficult, because the chefs usually think the restaurant is effectively an extension of them. So how could I remove myself and this will keep going? So that's a tricky one.
Yeah, well, we go into a business because we're either really good at something or there's a problem that we identify that we can help with right away. And we become someone who's doing that in the beginning. And when we decide to run it as a business, there's all these other things like, oh, I have to market. Oh, I have to learn how to sell. Oh, I have to process. Oh, I got admin. What do you mean about taxes? So all these things that we have to do to help the business run is what I help them understand, kind of embrace, and then systemize simply or easily, because I'm about let it be easy. So that they can get out of the way and let that happen. And then they can do what they like, which is either fulfill and take time off.
And too much, you've hit such a golden phrase there, getting out of their own way. Because when you start off in business, you kind of have to wear all the hats. But that only works for so long until you actually need somebody like you to come in and say, right, okay, this is how I can make it easier for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We we do that. We in the beginning, there's not that much that we have to do. We're usually touching our warm market, so we don't really have to advertise or market very much to get business. Or a big bunch of it comes our way through whatever way it happens. But there comes a point where we have to start reaching out and getting identification, our branding, our messaging, connecting with the right people. And now with social media and all this technology, it seems we have all these different advantages, but it actually makes things a little bit more complicated because you're not sure which one should I focus on. And then we attempt to do it all and we can't.
You're so right. That's just described social media to a T. So I wonder if you could share with us one of your sort of one of your release the Genie moments.
Yeah, well, the biggest one is in 2008, 2009 with the real estate crunch. I had started my entrepreneurial journey late 1999 and I had meteoric success. My first business in its first full year did 1.2 million, and that's the least that it did in the 4 years that I owned it. Then I sold the business and got into real estate. And I was just, I forgot my path, my reason why somewhere along that way. And in 2008, 2009, with the real estate crunch, I ended up filing for bankruptcy. I lost all of it. And what that time really did, being honest, was it just magnified all the things that I was ignoring and not doing well. And it just like right now with COVID, all this changes at once. We're used to gradual change, not massive change. And that's what happened. So on my 50th birthday in 2009, I was in bankruptcy court and I lost a couple million plus net worth. And it was everything I had ever worked for. And the biggest hurt out of all of that, besides the ego being bruised and battered, was I made this silent promise to myself, but that I was going to take care of my wife. And I felt that was my biggest feeling of failure. It wasn't even that I lost all this stuff, because that took a few days. No, I can't get rid of this, can't get rid of that. And then it was like, I was living in California and I was originally from Ohio, and all this stuff I was saying, no, 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 I hadn't been back there in a year. And so it was like, I was attached to all this stuff that I wasn't even using. So it was easy to let go of that. But that one pain was probably my biggest one. But that was in that same day. Here's the aha. I was on a deck. It was my birthday. A friend threw a party. I have the fortune of being really loyal, having a group of friends since third grade. We're still friends. There's 5 of us. There was 6. There's 5. And they were there. And then some other people that I know were there. So there was about 20 people there. And I realized they came to celebrate my birthday and to give me some form of support. And my wife was there with me. My kids had called from California and wished me, "Are you okay?" Making sure I was fine. I realized how wealthy I was in my health, my love, my friendships, and I realized that what I really lost that day wasn't much. It was just the material things. Now, I don't recommend this lesson. You can learn it for a lot less. But I realized in that moment that I was really wealthy, and I had forgotten that. So it was kind of like a big aha.
It's much, and you describe really beautifully about the differentiation between the consumer type society, where it's all what have you stockpiling, versus actually what are you really left with. Yeah, I mean, big lesson. And I always have this quote where smart people learn from their mistakes, geniuses learn from other people's mistakes. So, a great teacher sits in front of me here, and also now a genie. So let me now walk on to, and this is going to be good because we had a chat beforehand. What would you say is one of your sort of your inspiring quotes which you go to?
Yeah, well, my go-to quote for 25 plus years, I was just attracted to it and didn't realize the full value of it until a couple years ago. But it's Gandhi's quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." It always connected to it. And I thought I understood it until a couple years ago when I did some really deep work. And so I was just sharing with you earlier, but I celebrated 28 years of marriage. I have friends, I'm 60. I have friends that I've had for 50 years. I've had friendships. And in this program, I realized none of them knew me 100%. I never revealed myself fully. I always held back. And there were some things in life, early life, that may have been like, in quotes, the reason why, but there was really no excuse. And I thought in that moment, man, this person has loved me for that long and just grabbed onto these little glimpses of the real me. And so I made it my, mission at that point to really figure out how to reveal myself. And I realized that quote in that moment, because when I changed, my wife changed, her attitude changed, everyone around me changed, my relationships enhanced. My coaching clients would say, I don't know what you're doing, but you're different. And I go, good or bad? And they go, no, in a really good way. It was because I finally showed up fully. And so that quote to me is major, because when you realize when you can be that change, everything changes.
And to be honest, you are the epicenter then of that change, and that then just radiates out in circles. So wow. Well, I can well see why you are still standing and you've got a great coaching practice, because what a sort of a mantra to take forward with you. So yeah, really good. Love that. So now it sort of brings me to, and you might have already touched on this, but, has there been any other setback or an adversity or which you've had to deal with, or was as if the bankruptcy isn't enough? Has there been anything like that which you can talk to us about?
Oh, yeah. It was like yours, because you and I have talked, and you said, hey, I had this illness, but let me tell you the rest. And the rest was like, whoa. So, my childhood was also a big impacting influence on, I think, my independence, which has become an asset. And at the time, it was a necessity for survival. But my father dies at 5. At 6, I get separated from my brother. I don't see him for 10 years. So our formative years were gone. I started getting some physical abuse in the form of punishment. And then at 7, I got molested by an uncle, and at 8 by a half sister. And so everybody around me that supposedly loved me or would care for me were really, kind of abusing the heck out of me in many, many different ways. So I learned how to go internal. And this is where my long-term loyalty for friendships came in, because they were my family. And so the benefit, because we can look at how terrible that was. And I did all the work, and I've done all the forgiveness, and I've peeled back the layers. But, until a couple of years ago, when I realized part of me was still holding back because I didn't want to be damaged or hurt or whatever it was. And I wasn't even aware of it. But the good side is it created this strong loyalty from me. That's why I have 50-year friendships. It's also taught me how to be fiercely independent, because I had to rely on myself, because everyone else that I thought cared about me would it hurt. And so I also learned how to go in, how to be introspective. And then I had to relearn how to come out and play. So that was part of the journey. But all of these things, if somebody asked me today, oh, these are terrible. And yes, they are. And I wish them on nobody. But for me, that journey has been such a reward for the work that I've been able and willing to do, to really find out who I am and to go on this journey. And the people that I help, in profound ways, they have changes and shifts. And it's not because of me. I just find those people that are really ready.
I mean, that's so wonderful. And as you were speaking, it kind of reminded me of a Bob Proctor thing, where it's you live from the inside out. And people who haven't done that kind of work, that internal work, they struggle now, because actually the whole we're still in a lockdown situation. The whole external has been stripped away, and if they've never done that work, this is a big aha moment for them.
Yeah, it's huge because, we're used to gradual change. And even though we say we're resistant to it, nothing stays the same. We all agree with that.
Mm.
COVID has just amplified it, and it's done it on a global scale. And we have massive changes. We have parents that had to become teachers. We have parents that are workers that have to figure out how to work at home, and then how to be quiet and silent. And then now I don't have any time for myself, and they're wishing for that 2-hour commute in the car by themselves. But people have had to adjust and change. And then socially, we're all social beings, even if we only have one little connection. We're still social beings, and we've had to do that. So there's been massive stress that I don't even think is being fully understood yet by each individual. And so this is a time right now where, especially with coaches and entrepreneurs and people in business, that it's not time anymore to figure it out on your own. We can't afford to sit back and wait, and we can't afford to figure it all on our own, because if it didn't work pre-COVID, trust me, it's not working at all now, usually for that. So I've seen my coaching not just be more impacting, but also expanding, because more and more people are either feeling forced to become entrepreneurs or choosing it because they're just tired of it. And they realize this is giving people an opportunity to understand what they were putting themselves through to be in this career, in quotes, which is, what did it cost me in time? What did it cost me with my family? People have reconnected. They've reconnected with family. They've reconnected with friends. They've reconnected with cooking, right? Like all kinds of things. So there's been as much good as there is bad, but we're under a lot of stress. So this has been different.
For sure. And I come across in my various travels, coaches who say, "Oh, I'm not making much money. I think I should quit." That always strikes me as sort of quitting 3 feet from gold. So what would be something you would say to somebody if they came to you saying something like that?
Yeah, well, most people that get into coaching and go through a certification process, there's part of you has been called, or you wouldn't go through the process and spend the money to get trained. My certification was 2.5 years. And then you get out and they don't teach you very much about business, because they're teaching you coaching techniques. And you get out, and then there's all these other things, these pieces, as we were talking about before. The best thing to take with you is to understand that the tortoise wins the race. It's not the hare. If you're not planning a long-term strategy mentally, change that today. This is a long-term strategy. I had to go back to work 3 times. It was extremely emotional and painful. It was near depression where I almost wished myself death. It was that painful, that heavy. Yet I was so committed to my coaching. I said this, and then I changed the thought really quickly because I didn't want to attract it or manifest it. But I was willing to sleep in my car if that's what it took for me to create success as a coach. You have to have that passion and that conviction. You have to have that knowing inside that it is unwavering, that no matter what I'm going to face, I'm going to get back up and do it, no matter how many times it takes. Your story, my story of coming out of our things, that's part of what this is about. We have to have, what's our real reason why we want to do this? Why would you want to help another person figure something out that might change their life dramatically? Why would we want to get up from our pains to be here today? And then we have such joy when we first connected. It's like, oh my God, just our connection day together would have been worth all the stuff we went through, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I can, and even as I talk to you now, I can feel this wave of sort of positive energy. And I know that people watching this at a later date, they're going to feel exactly the same because it kind of radiates off you, which I can very easily see why people would come to see you and why the strategies you would put in place would work because you're there with them. It's literally side by side. So wow. Well, look, what are you cooking at the moment? Well, it's always nice to know what you're up to. So
I'm a
tell
good
us
cook.
what's going on.
I'm a good cook, literally or in
Oh,
business.
well, you know, you haven't got your penny on, so I can't
Right.
tell. Yeah.
That's true.
We'll come back and do another show about that. Don't worry.
Yeah. No, what I have cooking on in my business is I'm really heavy in my social media presence, which I use LinkedIn, to really connect with the audience. Because right now there's a statistic out that entrepreneurs 50 plus are the largest growing population of entrepreneurs on the planet for the last 18 months or 24 months prior to COVID.
Mm,
But it's accelerated now. But there's more people now that are starting out their businesses that are coming from successful backgrounds. So they have the knowledge and they have the patience because at 50 you do learn some of that, hopefully. Um, but I have my one-on-one coaching, which I do. I also run some group programs because that's an easy entry point for some people, and it introduces them into a more structured training slash coaching format. And then I do some recorded programs, which people do. There's certain things that you have to know in business, and one of the most important things, and very few people that I see teach it at all, which is how to price your program, your services properly. You're not a nonprofit. So if you don't know 100% if you're creating profit in your business or not, you're probably not as profitable as you could be. And even if you are, wouldn't it be nice to know?
yeah, for sure. And the one thing, I mean, I've been guilty of this as well. That actually, you kind of get shy when you have to ask for the money, even though you deliver like tremendous value. You're like, well, you know, and getting out of that mindset, it does require somebody else to sit with you and say, look, you know, you can't give this all away for free. Um, yeah.
So it's, if you think about what you've invested to get to your space, even Paul, which is how much time, knowledge, money have you invested to learn the lessons on what you speak about or what you bring out? It's the same thing for me. I've spent easy $100,000 on training and education. I've spent another, I'm going to be nice to myself because my ego doesn't want me to admit the full amount, but another 100,000 on events, seminars and programs. And I remember one time looking on a shelf at $23,000 worth of programs that I either hadn't opened, went halfway through, or stopped because I got stuck.
Mm.
And I know I'm not that unique, even though my ego would love me to believe it. Right. So there's, you have to realize your value. Part of it is what have you gone through? What have you spent on yourself? Somebody, a doctor goes to school for 6, 8 years, and then they come out and immediately they're charging a rate. Why
Mm.
are they worth it and you're not?
Mm. Mm. I mean, to be honest, every day is a school day. And so, yeah, I totally get that. Um, wow. Let me move on to after that wow moment where I now get to ask you three wishes. So, are you ready, mighty genie?
Yes, I have the lamp out. I'm rubbing it now.
That with your cooking, that's going to be a great image. So, I would just say that stir fry. So the first question is what is the best advice you've received in your life?
Hmm. I'm gonna just say what comes up to my mind. A really dear friend who just passed away a month ago told me when I was in my real estate business, He'd say, Jacob, sometimes you just have to take your lumps and walk away. And I would say, oh, I get it. And what he was meaning was he was seeing in me that I wasn't putting the effort out and that I wasn't showing up, that I wasn't stepping up. And he was saying, hey, cut your loss and regroup. And he would even say things like that. And I go, oh yeah, I get it. And on the surface, I understood it, but I didn't apply it to myself. And I ended up in bankruptcy court learning it. So I would just say it's not about taking your lumps and walking away, but take that quote or that saying and realize, are you showing up 100%? If you're not, connect with this business that you're in, or do what I'm doing now, which I'm asking people that are 50 or older. If you had a choice now, knowing what you know, would you do the same thing for a career? And sadly, 8 out of 10 are saying no, they would do something different. Do what you love, do what you're passionate about. It's never too late. I work with people. My oldest client right now is 74. Last year, he did $1 million in business, the first time that he's ever done that, because he's doing something that he's really passionate about. So find that passion. It will take you a long way, especially when you need to self-motivate.
Yeah, no, and you're right. It's the hard miles when you're at the back of the track, when there isn't any crowd to cheer you on, when it's just you versus yourself.
Yeah.
And if there's not a deep connection, it's not going to be enough, is it?
And so if you're not doing something that you absolutely get excited about getting up every single day, then trust my friend Ray and take your lump and walk away.
Great advice. And I know he'd be very proud to hear you say that. So moving on to question 2. What advice would you give your younger self?
A little bit of what I was just talking about. Really trust myself more, be willing to take more risk and do it instead of thinking about it. I held back for decades. I held back. And everyone would say, I have all this potential, but I didn't believe it. And the only way you get to belief is by doing. I can tell you all day how great you are, how fantastic you are, how much potential you have for this business idea. But if you don't get out and do the steps, you're not going to do it. And so I would just say my younger self is go for it. Mistakes are lessons. Failure plants a seed of a new opportunity and it ends something that wasn't working anyway.
Awesome. And again, very much taking the correct temperature of where we're at, where actually people maybe for the very first time have been forced to actually look at their life and actually say, look, is this working and what can I go to? No, great advice. And I know that's going to really resonate with people watching. So really, really great. So, I mean, I've got great value for my 2 wishes. I'm almost kind of a little bit shy about asking my third, but I'm going to push through.
Let's do it.
What personal habit would you attribute to your success?
Persistence. And that comes with activating your belief and creating the faith that it takes to stay in it. Persistence will show us the path. It'll either show us that we're on the right path, or it'll open up the next pathway that we're supposed to take. And even if we don't take it right away, it'll keep showing it eventually until it yells at you. Yeah.
I agree. And I was actually speaking to someone today, and, lessons keep coming around until you learn them, and then they tend to go away. So if you're not learning the lesson, the same stuff's going to come back around in a different way. So I know, and I was really curious to see this. What's one book? I mean, I know there's many, but what's one book which sort of really has been changing your life, or something you go to?
Yeah. So again, this probably goes back, let's see, I'm 60, 30 years. This book is on my desk. I read 3 sentences, 3 pages, or a chapter a day, every day that I work minimum. Are we on video or is this just audio?
No, we're on video as well, my friend.
Okay, here it is. Yeah, Think and Grow.
You mean this one?
Right? Like minds think alike. And
your
so
one looks far more the part. Mine's slick and glossy. So
it's a little tattered, but not too bad. It's probably my third.
It's not as bad as
volume.
Bob Proctor's, because his one looks really tatty now.
Yes, it does. Yeah, his is taped together and things. My wife worked with him for a while. Like it worked for him, I should say. So I got to meet him a few times, and yeah, it's real. His stuff is real. People ask me about this book. Every time I read it, and like I said, I've been reading it 30 years. I pick up something new every single time. That's why sometimes I only read 2 or 3 sentences. Good lesson for the day. Let me apply it. And that's one thing that I've learned is there's a quick formula. It's a little piece of advice, but you discover something, you learn it, you implement it. Otherwise, it's just good information.
Yeah. And there's so much information and noise out there that actually, it takes the action to say, no, I think enough about what I've read or I've heard to actually make a change. So, no, I love it. I love it. And great formula. Well, look, unfortunately, we come to the sad part of the show, which is the end, which is kind of a bit of a bum. But let me do a very quick summary, and then we're going to ask you where we can find you. Well, look, this guy, there's energy pouring off him. Very authentic, very genuine. The desire to help somebody get going forward, but in a proper way, not in a sort of a sugar-coated off you go way. So and somebody who's been through the hard knocks, and actually you don't have to go through those hard knocks, because this Jacob is able to actually put this in one sort of key moment. So thank you very much for being today's Genie. Where can people get hold of you?
Yeah, you're welcome. You can find me on LinkedIn, just my name, Jacob Roig. Anybody here that would like to share a message or have a question, you can email me at the same thing, jacobroig@gmail.com. It's a general box that will be filtered by my VA or my assistant, and I respond to every single message. Or my website, which is jacobroig.com. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, look, there we know you got your name, and now we've got your number. So
That's right.
We've got you locked in our coordinates. So thank you once again for being today's Genie. Have you had fun?
Paul, this has been, again, another layer of, we're brothers from another mother. We're connected at the heart. And like I told Paul on the first time we met him, I now have a friend for life. I really do believe that. Thank you for putting this out there and being that light that shines it on people like myself and all your other guests that you have, because the world's hungry for this type of information, and you're a great resource and inspiration. And if you guys haven't heard of Paul's story, please do, because if you need a little motivation, just listen to that. Thank you.
To be honest, wonderful, and I feel motivated with that pep talk. So you see how easy it is so, no, thank you very much. It's all very graciously received, and thank you very much for the kind words. And if it wasn't for guests like you who are willing to come and to share your stories, to show you vulnerability, then actually it's not worth watching. So I do believe it's a two-way street on that. So thank you very much. And I kind of like bouncing it back on you. So everyone, look, you've heard Jacob's wonderful story. If that's something which you have resonated with or you need help with, get in touch. He's not gonna do you any harm, and you may then have a new friend for life. So I'd like to everyone to encourage you to go forward today to release your genie and make somebody else's life better. So thank you, and thank you, Jacob.
Well, that's a wrap. You have been listening to yet another episode of the Release the Genie podcast with host Paul Rogers. Be sure to follow Paul on the LinkedIn platform and learn more of Paul's resources at www.takeactionacademy.ca. And until next time, as always, be mindful and be sure to release your genie. Thanks for listening.